Right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining the Legislative Public Forum this afternoon. My name is Jean Seeland, and I'm a member of League of Women Voters. The legislative forums are sponsored by 30-some organizations, and I just want to thank all of those organizations for being sponsors. Tonight, we have Jerry Hagman, who will be doing the timing, and Augustus Sires, who will be fielding the questions. And of course, Mike Dargan is our wonderful tech person. Now, as a public, you may ask questions, and you can do that through the chat feature, either on Zoom or on Facebook. And Augusta will take those questions and pass them on to me. I'm going to ask one more favor. If you are not speaking, would you please be muted? Okay, that might just help everyone. If that's possible for all of us. This evening, we have a topic of the economy. But before we get to a discussion of the economy, I would like to give each legislator about 4 minutes or so to just talk about their priorities for the session. And then after each legislator has had a chance to talk about their priorities, then we will go to the discussion of the topics. So, Senator Dotzler, would you like to start? Senator Dotzler, can you hear me?
Looks like he dropped off, Jean.
Okay, then why don't we go to Senator Giddens, if you would start.
Okay, sorry we lost Senator Dotzler there, but I'm sure he'll be back with us. It's great to be with you all this evening, both the folks on the Zoom, and we're live streaming this on Facebook too right now, so welcome to all those folks on Facebook. It's you know, good to be back in the Capitol. It's always, you know, an honor to be able to be back down there representing our constituents from the Cedar Valley and Blackhawk County. So happy to be there for you. I'll share my committee assignments. So I'm on education, transportation, Veterans Affairs, and I'm ranking member of Veterans Affairs, state government, commerce, which is a new assignment for me, and I am the ranking member of commerce as well. That's a brand new thing, so I'm honored to be able to do that, and I'm kind of on a steep learning curve right now with that committee, but excited to take on that new responsibility. And then I have a budget subcommittee, the administration and regulation budget subcommittee as well. So 6 total committee assignments. So a couple of things you asked about priorities. Education, you know, is a big issue for us. It always is. You know, we have we've underfunded our K-12 education system and our community colleges and Regents universities, and we haven't done a good job of supporting, you know, universal pre-K across the state as well. So really, I feel like we've got an opportunity right now with a budget surplus and a lot of extra money on the table to do some things to try to help catch up from, you know, sort of chronic underfunding all the way across the spectrum for education that we've done in the last several years. And I'm afraid that we're going to squander that opportunity. So that's a big concern of mine, is just giving education from pre-K all the way up through our Regents universities the resources that they need, and using this moment now to do that. You know, I'm very concerned about school districts across the state right now. The impacts that COVID had on our school districts have been significant, and they're lasting. We have issues all over with staff shortages. It's right here in the Cedar Valley, and it's in school districts across the state. not just teachers, but, bus drivers, other support personnel, and so forth. Some school districts have had to cancel school actually because of a lack of staff. We know of cases of administrators working in classrooms and so forth, just to try to kind of get by. So again, I'd like to see us, use some of these resources that we've got right now to mend some of the issues that we've neglected in the past here, and to put us on a better path for our education system. That's a top priority for me right now. So, workforce, I'll let others kind of chime in as well, but workforce across the board in every sector of the economy is an issue. I know economy is the topic that we're talking about tonight, and it really is all about workforce right now. So because I've used my time, I'll leave my comments focused mostly on education and let my colleagues chime in about some of the other areas of the workforce that we also need to be addressing. Thank you again.
Thank you. Representative Kressig, 4 minutes, okay? What are your priorities for the session?
Okay, well, thanks for the League of Women Voters and other groups for organizing this effort to share information from us. I'm on Commerce. I'm ranking member of Public Safety. I'm on the Transportation Committee, and then I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Appropriations Committee. We just wrapped up the second week of the Iowa legislature. We had an opportunity, veterans from across the state were there. It was a great event that I enjoyed, and good to see everyone. Boy, I tell you, the cold, extreme cold weather that we've been facing here in Iowa has, made it difficult for us to get out and do things. So hopefully we can get something done regarding that. We did have some fairly nasty negative remarks made from the Iowa Senate president about schools and teachers. I couldn't believe that was even said going forward. I think it just is adding more stress and anxiety to the teacher's role that they do. So I gotta say, I want to thank teachers for what they do educating our students. It's critical. And COVID, we're seeing the COVID cases skyrocketing in the state, and people just need to be vaccinated and also get tested if they have symptoms. Well, a few areas that I'm very interested in is school funding and support for K-12 and post-secondary, our region schools and our community colleges. One thing that I have been working on, and I have for quite a few years now, is the medical cannabis program. I'm working, drafting legislation. I've been working with groups on this issue. There's things that need to be done in that to make it effective. We're seeing other states that are having a pretty good effect by having an effective medical cannabis program in the state. The other one, I know Timmy's probably going to chat on this too, is mental health. What I've seen over the years is the state of Iowa, we're currently 51st for the number of mental health institute beds in the state. We're 45th for mental health workforce availability, 47th for the number of psychiatrists, and 46th for the number of psychologists. So we have a lot of work to do. And I serve on a board of an Allen Child Protection Center. And we're seeing parts of our counties just have no efforts to address mental health in those areas. So hopefully we can come up with a plan that works, that, you know, gives us the opportunity to attract more psychologists, psychiatrists, bed availability, early intervention for students. So I think those are some of the areas, you know, and I'm on public safety, and there's several things that we're going to probably be dealing with, but I'd love to hear your feedback, and thanks for having it.
Thank you. Senator Dotzler.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I got kicked off there. I don't know what happened when we went live stream. I lost it. So I don't know what was said right at the very start, but first of all, it's great to be back, even though we're virtual. I've been quite busy over this summer dealing with my new addition on my house and helping out with mom. So really keeping exceedingly busy. But the legislature is starting out, Bob, Representative Kressig talked about it, what happened in the Senate. The first day, usually we got speeches that set a pattern for where we're going to be. And, you know, a lot of times they're kind of partisan, but this was the first time in 26 speeches in a row that I never stood up and not one single Democrat stood up, even out of politeness, to the president of the Senate speech. And he really set the tone of divisiveness for this upcoming session by calling the press sinister, teachers sinister agenda, and it went downhill after that. So we couldn't believe what was coming out of their mouth. And this session is really, really off on the wrong foot. I serve on the ranking member on economic development budget sub, and I've been on that sub. This will be my 26th year. I sit on labor and business and been on that even my 6 years in the Iowa House. I also sit on the Veterans Committee, and I'm on what they call the powerful two committees, the Ways and Means Committee and full appropriation. So every budget goes through there. And then I'm also the assistant minority Democratic leader. And that does keep me busy. And when you talk about what's going on good, you know, what we're looking at for the year, hands down, everywhere across the board, all businesses, you name the field, educators, nurses, everywhere, we are short workers. And it hasn't been something that just happened. It's been a long, slow train wreck that started way back early on with Republicans in control. When I first ran for office, there was a scans report, the Secretary's Commission on Necessary Skills back in the 90s that said by the time you reach the year 2000 and above, you're going to have worker shortages across the country in Iowa with skill sets. And here in Iowa, Governor Branstad, some years back when he was just on his last term as governor, requested that Georgetown University, the Workforce Center, research Iowa's workforce. And they came back with a report that said, by right now, by 2025, Iowa is going to be short 200 to 300,000 workers. That's even if every high school student, every Iowan stays here in Iowa. So what has been done? We have given more resources away and not worked on the things that will recruit people. And, the majority leader, Senator Whitford said, well, it's getting worse, so we don't really know how to fix it. Well, if they listen to people, they would know how to fix it. And it's unfortunately that instead of fixing it this session, we are going to give away the revenue that we need to move forward. And just one brief example would be the University of Northern Iowa, in one of our meetings, reported to us that over 50% of the out-of-state students that come to Iowa stay here. And what we're seeing now is the tuition rates for out-of-state students and tuition rate across the universities, all three of them, are going up. And I was at a forum just last Friday, 2 weeks ago, Friday. Let's see, 2 weeks ago from today with, and Senator Giddens was there. And afterwards, I was there with Speaker Grassley. Afterwards, the new manager of Tyson came up to me after I made that comment about a university. He says, you know, that's true. My son was going to go to Iowa, but the tuition for out-of-state students were too high, and he went to a different state, and that guy's probably going to stay there. So we need to really work on that. I know we're going to talk about the budget. I can't tell how long I've talked, but I'm going to stop right there. I'm supposed to be looking, maybe Sherry wave at me or somebody. I'm sure I use my time up. I always do, gee. So thank you, and I'll just let you guys move on.
Thanks. Let's go to Representative Brown Powers, please. 4 minutes.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully we won't be in Zoom mode all year. So currently I am serving on appropriations, HHS budget, human resources, veterans affairs, and ranking member of natural resources. This week has been spent really all on mental health. We have 4 bills, pretty significant bills coming through the House that are going to be bipartisan bills. We are hearing that they're the solution for mental health. They're not that. They definitely are steps going forward for mental health, and they're going to help, because let's keep in mind that we've been really doing very little to nothing for years, and nothing really for child mental health. So I'm hoping that these bills do make some difference for Iowans. The big one that well, there's a couple, but what I'm concerned about with all of these bills, as we look at expanding beds, which is critical. So we're looking at expanding overall beds and expanding intensive care or crisis beds. So both of those are extremely important, because we are still shipping people all over the place, and that's not cost effective, nor is it therapeutic for the person with mental health or that family. But as everybody so far has talked about, is the work shortage. So as we expand the beds, are we going to have people to work and work those beds? So that's kind of one of my biggest concerns going forward. We need the beds, but we need the workers. And so I talked to the media this week about, making Iowa look a little more friendlier, and bringing people to Iowa to work. And I think that's one of our big downfalls right now is, if you look at Iowa, if you're a young person and you look at Iowa, and you look at the pay rates, and you look at some of the legislation that's gone through, we don't have a beach and we don't have a mountain. We're not looking really that favorable for folks. So they're moving on, and that's a problem. And we really need to look at that as well as we look at helping our mental health and our overall healthcare system, education system, and so on. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is that we're starting to actually put some money where our mouth is, right? So I've been saying this for years. Let's put some money where our mouth is. So there is a bill that's going to actually start putting some money where our mouth is. So in 2023, for example, we're looking at an extra $1 million going in for mental health services. But we're also doing $300 million corporate giveaways. So the scale to me still looks a bit tipped, right? So $1 million for mental health and $300 million for corporations. So I think we have some work to do there, but I am going to support thus far, these mental health bills, because I think we need to start doing something since we're doing nothing. And the other thing that we have going on is that, remember, our counties are now all losing their backfill. So the backfill got pulled, and that's going to be distributed to pay for mental health. That was the one way that they thought that would be a great way for the state to take over mental health funding, taking away backfill. Now, you're going to see that's going to bite us in the butt on the other side. So first of all, let's all remember that general budget money is not guaranteed, because we guaranteed backfill money, we took it away. So as we give money to mental health and other things, we've got to remember that that money then can at some point be taken away. Since we took that backfill money away, now that takes away from our education. There was money that went towards education that no longer is going to go there. There was money that went into other things in our county that are no longer going to exist. So that means increased property taxes for all the states or all the cities that are losing their backfill. So we just kind of shifted the coconuts there, and we're going to see problems as we talk about mental health, education, our economy, making Iowans welcome. One of the things to think about that I think sends a pretty negative narrative about Iowa is our lowest paid workers are the people that take care of our children, take care of our persons with disabilities, and take care of our senior citizens. So there's a message that we're sending. It's pretty obvious, and to me, that sends a pretty negative narrative about our, what we feel is important, or what some people in Iowa feel is important. So I think we really need to talk about those things. We are going to talk about some ways to keep students here, and we're going to talk about some tuition reimbursement and those kinds of things, but we are just scratching the surface, and we have a lot of work to do in that realm. And then the other thing that has come up really strong this week is that Governor Reynolds in her speech gave some folks a federal money, $1,000 bonus for healthcare workers, police officers, and teachers. Kind of at the backside of saying we're going to take public education money away, but we're going to give teachers $1,000. But what has actually happened from that is I'm getting a lot of calls from a lot of people who also stood strong during COVID and are not included in that. So as we started to carve certain people out, we also left people out. And that is sending kind of a negative vibe across Iowa, because firefighters are like, well, we put out your fires the whole time during COVID too. EMS, we did too. The teachers are great, but you know what? Our teachers' associates, they were there the whole time too, as was the maintenance man. And so these are the people that are calling me saying, hey, we support the people that you're giving money to, but by carving that out, we also left a huge group of people out that are a little frustrated right now. So anyway, I'll stop there because we've got lots to talk about tonight, but there's a lot of things that we need to do on the forefront yet.
Thank you. Representative Smith.
Hi, yes, good evening. Thank you all for joining, and hope you all are staying warm. I'll echo Representative Brown Power's comments, but hopefully we're not in Zoom mode all year, but I'm definitely understanding what's happening in our community and across the state. It's important that we keep each other safe. This year, I'm serving on the Education Committee. Once again, I also will be serving on Natural Resources, IT, and Agriculture. I will say that for Ag, we haven't met yet this year. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot happening in that committee thus far. I'll also say Natural Resources, I think there's some interesting things that are happening. I know Representative Brown Powers being our ranking on that. I typically get some really good bills. She lets me kind of my pick of the litter when it comes to things to work on, but I will say that in the Cedar Valley, uniquely, the emerald ash borer issue is one that's expensive to our community. We haven't really addressed it. I know the federal government has kind of given up on it a little bit. And so exploring what that means for literally our natural resources, our quality of life, and the things that we enjoy here, our ability to attract talent to the community is important because those injections to the trees are about $250 a piece. And you got to do them often. If your neighbor doesn't do it, then it doesn't really matter if you do. In the Information Technology Committee, where Representative Williams is our ranking, I know we're working on some cybersecurity things for municipalities, and so really protecting our local government from potential cyber attacks is something that's really important given the fact that we oftentimes don't have a lot of resources locally. And so giving some freedom within our administrative services to protect our communities and our data is important. And education, it seems like our hands are out, and they've been out for a long time. And it's not like we're getting tired, but I can tell you the wave seems to just keep growing every year, every week. And so we're holding back bad policy, but we're doing things like expanding grant program opportunities for teachers. We're doing things like removing barriers, or at times removing qualifications for teacher licensing. I think the latter gives me some angst and some concern. I think my greatest concern, though, is our constant assault on educators in the state by the legislature. No teacher program repayment matters. No $1,000 bonus matters when the morale is low because our educators have been beat up. And you know, when Representative Power spoke about this parsing out, that's what happens when you play political games with the people who are doing the work. You're trying to pit one group against another, and you miss somebody. It's like naming legislators or elected officials at an event. You don't do it unless you know you got everybody on the list. And unfortunately, our governor is making the mistake of trying to parcel people out. And I think it's intentional about pitting folks against each other. And so we got to be mindful of that and making sure that we are uplifting and supporting all the folks to make sure our communities kept ticking during COVID, because everybody was important. Everybody was essential. And to parse them out, I think, is a mistake, but I think it's also intentional. For me, one thing that I'm making a legislative priority is working on small business healthcare plans for the state. On the gubernatorial campaign, there were some programs that we talked about a bit that we pitched, and I have good relationships with some folks in the Republican caucus, Representative Sorensen and Thompson. And so we're working together to kind of identify some of the programs that we know statewide have gotten at least some good traction. And I think Iowa's a prime place where if we have small business owners who want to pull their employees to get a reduced rate through the ACA and offer healthcare, maybe they can't pay $20 an hour, but if they can offer part-time employees full-time healthcare benefits, we can start getting people to come back into the workforce in a meaningful way because we're offering them something. We're offering them something that helps their quality of life improve. And so I think we have to get innovative. We have to be creative. We can't be fearful. And I don't think there's one Democratic or Republican approach to these issues. I think that the issues of the people, we've just got to be bold about innovating and challenging these things. And so that's going to be kind of my focus as we go into this session. We'll keep grinding, but always know that the Cedar Valley group, we're fighting like hell on week one. And so, you know, I'm proud of this team. I look forward to continuing to do the work this year.
Thank you. Has Representative Williams made it in yet? What about Senator Sweeney?
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, we'll go to you, Representative Williams.
Well, hello, everybody. It's good to have a chance to catch up, and I appreciate hearing the comments from their senators and representatives, because during the week, we do get a little bit of a chance to speak, but on the other hand, we're off on our own assignments. So it's good to have this time to catch up with everybody. And I look forward to any questions and answers that may be coming. This session, my committees are Agriculture, along with Representative Smith, Appropriations, Information Technology, along with Representative Smith, Economic Growth. Let's see, am I on that by myself? I can't believe it. It's a big committee. And then my fifth committee is the Ag and Department of Natural Resources Budget Subcommittee. So we're up and running. Some of the committees have many more bills going than others. For example, Representative Brown Powers gave some good examples of things she's working on. A couple of small examples in appropriations. We're looking at gambling revenues and tax revenues from those gambling revenues are pretty modest, but they're growing quickly. So we want to put that into the projections. I guess my side comment to that is I'm concerned with all the advertising and everything that we need to make sure that we have enough of appropriation going for people that have gambling issues. That's something I want to work on behind the scenes if I can. Fairly minor in the whole scheme of things, probably, but if it's something I can help with, then I will. And in terms of information technology, as Representative Smith mentioned, we will be looking at cybersecurity policy, both from the perspective of what are we doing to make sure that local, county, and local governments have the resources they need and can work on those. In fact, Representative Smith has one of the bills on that. And also, we'll be looking at data privacy. And unfortunately, data privacy probably should be handled at the federal level, but as far as I know, we don't really have good federal structures in place. And I'll be hearing more about that this week with the interest groups coming to Des Moines to talk to us about that. I might mention for the Ag and DNR budget, it appears that the governor has proposed a flat budget for the coming year. And of course, we have a long ways to go. We don't know what's going to happen, but that means 12 million for REAP instead of going to the 20 million that was originally the idea. It means no more water quality money. So I'm not too pleased about that. The only good thing about it is there wasn't a takeaway, I guess. So also, Senator Liz Mathis made a comment a while back, and she said, when you're in the minority, you have a chance to focus on constituent support if you are not in the majority. And this week, we met with the Veterans Affairs folks, and I picked up a little assignment to help here in Blackhawk County. I enjoyed doing that. We had students from the Civil Air Patrol in, and all of us got to I think everybody did. Both senators and representatives got to visit with these students who are the future. And those are the folks that we have to get engaged and invested in what's going on, because we're going to change these things at the voting booth. That's how it needs to happen. And then I had the opportunity to meet with two groups of firefighters, both the volunteer firefighters who are working on incentives to help recruit and retain volunteer firefighters in the rural areas, and also the professional firefighters. And I was struck by the discussion with David Lloyd. We talked a little bit about firefighting and making sure that we have the benefits and the incentives to recruit and retrain professionals. But then he talked about citizens and the mental health challenges that he sees every shift in his service. So that goes back to what Representative Brown Powers was saying. I can see if we could change things at the voting booth, ways through most of these issues. The one that concerns me the most is childcare, because I don't see a long-term solution for that without somehow increasing the incomes for the groups that Representative Brown Powers spoke about. That of these service areas, those are the employees that seem to be lagging behind in terms of income. We brag about being a low-income state, but then that means that people don't have the incomes to provide their own child care. They don't have the incomes for recreation, quality of life things. So I've asked for some input from you all on what are some ideas to do with childcare. We have $30 million coming from the federal government, but that's a one-time thing. So with that, I will be quiet and look for some more conversation.
Thank you. Senator Sweeney, are you on?
Yes, I am. My
Okay.
husband didn't get home in time for us to get to the funeral visitation, and I apologize. I have been home all week with a lung infection, so sometimes I should have brought a hot beverage here when I'm trying to speak. Okay, I am Annette Sweeney. I live not too far from Iowa Falls, Iowa. I will have a slice of BlackHawk if I am reelected, and so right now I represent Hardin County, Grundy County, the east side of I-35, Story County, and a slice of Bremer County, or Butler County, excuse me. And so I'm on agriculture. I'm the vice chair, education, human resources, natural resources, and the environment. I'm the chair of that. I'm also on Ways and Means, the Education Appropriation Subcommittee, and International Relations, which that's a fun one, and also Watershed Planning Advisory Council. So this year, the priorities for me going in, and also some of it for our caucus. First of all, I want to be very clear that some of the comments made by the President of the Senate does not reflect all of our thinking. So I want to make sure that you all understand that. For me, and a lot of things have been talked about, our mental health. I know that we're working hard on access centers for our mental health, and I know that Senator Edler is working he has been for the last 5 years. So what that is that instead of taking someone that needs some help and extra care, that they don't just take them to jail or they take them to the hospital and just leave them there. That we want access centers to where the individual will be taken care of and in a very clinical manner. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, within my natural resources environment, we are really honing in on the water quality initiative that was passed in 2018. We have plenty of money in there for water quality projects. And in fact, my South Fork Watershed Alliance, which is in Hardin County, we have a $99,000 grant that is going to be putting in saturated buffers and also bioreactors. And along stream banks, also stream bank restorations. So there's a lot of exciting things going on in that environment. As for education, I know that we have a number of bills making its way through. So after the first week, sometimes it's kind of interesting to see what everybody's priorities are. Thank you very much for this time.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to our main topic of the evening, the economy. And I think everyone will have 6 minutes to discuss, and that should leave us plenty of time for questions at the end, because that is a very important part of the forums. So why don't we begin with Representative Kressig, if you would.
Unmute. You said Representative Kressig, was that accurate?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah, so I was asked by some of my colleagues to maybe share some things with the economy. And just a little brief history, the feds gave Iowa about $9.2 billion in monies. 7.16 billion of those dollars went to departments at the state level. About 4.6 billion has been spent, and about 2.5 billion has not been spent. Total reserves at the state were currently at about 816 million of ending balance, is how they term that. And then there's 612 million in the cash reserve fund. We also have about 204 million for the economic reserve, deals with emergencies across the state. So, you know, financially, we're doing well economically, but a large part of that is because what the federal government gave to the state of Iowa. I know in the governor's proposal that she has, I think Timmy mentioned it, $1,000 bonus for public safety and teachers. And it was interesting, her comment about firefighters not being included. I thought, you know, God, those are the people that are out saving lives, and they weren't included. The governor has a 4% flat tax that basically goes into full effect in 2026. So, you know, the flat tax, I think, or there's plans by the Senate, from my understanding, they want to eliminate the income tax completely. the House. I don't know exactly the direction where that's headed. I do know that there is a language in there to repeal taxes on retirement income. So I think that that may be beneficial to a lot of Iowans that are struggling. But, you know, if you look at this down the road, and a lot of these numbers I think will change, but you know, right now it's gonna be an impact of about $300 million to the state. So, you know, with that, I'm sure programs would be in some kind of jeopardy going forward. I do know that with economies, we've seen with the pandemic and the impacts it's had on businesses, especially restaurants, bars, you know, those kinds of areas. They've really had some difficult times working through this, and they've actually requested the resources to get through that. I know economically, the governor also had a proposal to take the unemployment from 6 months to 4 months. And I know Senator Dotzler, he's worked on this for quite a few years, but the reality of the state of Iowa, we have a worker shortage. There just aren't enough people here in the state to take jobs. And so we're seeing some of these industries really struggling through that. And I named a few of them, restaurants and those types of things, hotels, bars. So, you know, I'm sure going forward, how this is going to look or unfold, where something goes to the governor and signed, I would think there's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of questions about how this can, and you know, if you look at the flat tax, who's going to benefit the most from the proposal? Is it going to be corporate structures? And if you look at corporate, they currently are one of the lower numbers contributing to the state. Their numbers are a lot lower. And when it comes to income tax, it's the people like the folks here on the meeting today, though their income tax. And then there's the issue with sales tax. Where's that going to go? How is that going to impact the state? Is that going to have to be raised? So there's a lot of unknowns. And I know I saw a thing on Twitter that this House Republicans met, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but they're discussing how this all moves forward. So there's a lot of unknowns on this. And I guess that's kind of where I'm going to end. But I know our discussion is about economic issues, and I think all those things that I mentioned are going to play a key role. So thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we go to Representative Williams?
Thank you, Jean. Representative Kressick, that was excellent. That was an excellent overview of some factors that I hadn't even thought of. And I'll probably just need to go into a little bit of detail here. Going back to the comment that I made a few minutes ago about, well, it's related to workforce, and I brought it up particularly in regards with childcare and what can we do about childcare long term. And it's tied around the low wages of the folks that are in our service industries, the public safety and the senior care and childcare, as Representative Brown Powers mentioned. So that's an economic issue. The other economic issues, in my opinion, can be handled with long-term thinking and proper funding. From a mental health standpoint, we're sending patients out of state. Just think what that does to the families and to the patients themselves, not to mention the cost of it, which we should be doing, but we should be doing, but the effect on the family is an impediment on our entire economy. So I heard a comment or saw a comment that talked about conservative pro-growth, and to me that's a little bit of an oxymoron, because we're one of the slowest growing states in the Midwest. And the reason is because we are not investing in the future, in the long-term future. Education is another example of that is also a driver of the economy and quality of life issues. So things are looking up for a few of us and not so positive for so many folks that don't understand what's going on. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ron Powers.
Thank you, Jean. So I think Bob did a great job kind of covering it in general. And Jerry mentioned that, well, if our sales tax went up, maybe it would go to conservation. I wouldn't hold our breath on that. One of the things in natural resources that I'm dealing with right now is that our park rangers are being forced to move off-site. Any of those living in their houses at the parks will be all removed by November 2022 because we've undercut the budget so much and had little maintenance done to those homes that they're actually shutting them all down. And we've got rangers across Iowa who are now needing to relocate. They were hired and said 8 years ago that said you have to live on site. Now when the prices of homes are so high, they're being forced to move out of the park and buy a new home. And several of them have shared that they're leaving Iowa, that they can't afford to buy a home. And they are left in a situation that's really been kind of a negative one for them. So, and as I said before, we've had, as we look at the 4% flat tax idea, I would challenge, or not challenge, but I would encourage everyone to go look and see what income tax level you're paying now. Representative Williams and I have talked about this, that some people don't know what they're paying, and those 4%, oh, maybe that's not so bad. But you may have been paying less than 4 already, and now you're going to have to increase that. Some folks were paying more than that, and now they are going to drop down. But I can tell you that a lot of the folks that I work with in Waterloo, Iowa, they weren't paying 4%, and 4% is going to be a really big deal for them. So that's going to be a problem. And this summer, I visited with all of our nonprofits in the Cedar Valley, and so funding comes back to me as a concern. Where is the funding going to come if we lower that? If we took out the backfill, we're going to go with a 4% flat tax or regressive, however you want to talk about it. Then how are we going to fund the services for people? So in my mind right now, my big concern is that we've got some people that are going to fall through the cracks once again. And so on the backs of those folks, some of these changes are going to happen. And I have great concern in that. When we talk about mental health and we talk about the funding there, and the shortage, just and Representative Williams kind of touched on it, and I wanted to go back, because when we send mental health patients out of their county, we pay more for that. When we send them out of Iowa, we pay even more for that. We currently have patients living in the ER in both Mercy One and Unity Point that have mental health conditions, and they've been living there up to 10 days, some of them. That's not very cost effective either. And it takes a strain more on the staff. And let's remember that person that has mental health, that is not a therapeutic setting for them to be living in or even being managed. So That's not a really great idea. And with the overall work shortage, we're bringing in people and we're offering some pretty high dollar traveling folks, traveling nurses, traveling CNAs, traveling therapists, traveling doctors. And that's just on the healthcare side. And the money that we pay out for them to come to Iowa to work, remember, they're not going to stay here, folks, is just extraordinarily high. And so that in itself, that's eating the budgets away from our providers that have to pay for outside people to come in. We were at a discussion today talking about the traveling nurses and what they make per hour compared to our nurse who lives and raises their family here in Waterloo. That's not a good way. That's not a good narrative. So as I've talked before, I really think that we need to look at the message that we're sending to our young people, that we want them to stay and we want them to go to college here, and to people coming to Iowa that we want them to work and stay. So Bill Dotzler, I think, should talk the most on this because he's worked the hardest for so many years on economic development, and he's really pushed. And I think we're at a place where we haven't listened, and we're at a critical point right now for Iowa. And I've got great concern.
Thank you. Representative Smith?
I'll likely probably echo a lot of what my peers have said, but I share that concern that I think has been expressed. In my 6 years in the legislature, there's been very little, if any, vision for the future of Iowa's economy whatsoever, or even what our economic health will look like. There's not a whole lot of measures that the state has set as real indicators for what that should mean. And for me, we have to make sure that we're growing our population in a way that attracts employees. And that means that our skin and bones of our community has to be there. That's our public schools and our public services. And if that's the way that we really build communities for the future, we haven't really done that. When I think about the fact that most of our conversations that we're having around economic growth, workforce development, they're really Band-Aid solutions that are looking at 3 to 5 years of potential impact, kind of just trying to wade across this thing until we hope better days come, but not really addressing our challenges of 10 and 20 years from now, when Iowa will be one of few states whose population shifts dramatically in a way that's really negative. In the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to have more people in the state of Iowa who are over the age of 60 than under the age of 18. That is a workforce nightmare, especially given the fact that we will have folks who are underpaid trying to take care of individuals in long-term care when we don't have enough to even solve that piece of the puzzle. That is catastrophic for any state, for any community, for any organization. I apologize, my dog Luigi is making this daily cameo on meetings today. But I think we're not growing our economy or our population fast enough, and we're not growing it in the correct areas. All right, we got Polk County, Scott County, Lynn County, and Johnson County that accounted for roughly 70% of our population growth. We need a 99 county solution. BlackHawk County is two places that I think our population probably did grow, but the census says it doesn't. And so if government is going to be a barrier for individuals participating in the census, because it was this last go around, because of lack of confidence, that has a huge impact to workforce dollars, to economic development dollars that come into our state or our community based on population. And lastly, to the specifics of what we saw with shifting unemployment benefits, it doesn't really correlate to solving workforce shortage. It just really punishes the people who are already struggling to get by day to day. And so we've got some real issues here, but I do believe that we need a strong 99 county solution that focuses on taking care of the basics first. But people across the state of Iowa don't have clean drinking water. The prospects of competitive jobs don't even exist. And good schools are hard to come by. And not because our teachers aren't working hard enough, but our state has done a good job of starving our school districts across the state to make it difficult for employers to want to come here. And you got to either have employers coming that drive people, or a lot of people here that drives an employer. And right now we have neither. And I'm concerned about what the future of Iowa looks like with the lack of vision. And so, one of the solutions I'm interested in is figuring out how do we buffer our small business owners to be able to keep people engaged and in the workforce, so we have a taxable base. Getting rid of the state income tax, I think, would be disastrous, given that we got rid of the backfill and we're funding our brain health and mental health regions with general fund allocations. And so I will say this one caveat that I think we have to be in mindful of, and I'll pull the cloak back, I guess, a little bit. But the governor's flat tax, whether we like the idea or not, I think it was a brilliant move because Democratic messaging has been pay your fair share. To say 4% flat tax, and every heading in every major publication in the state said flat tax 4%. Now we're on the defensive. We got to stop playing party politics, but we've got to also make sure that our messaging is right. And we're on our heels now trying to figure out how we defend a flat tax messaging from the governor's office when we've been talking about fair share. All the nuances, all the caveats, all the carve-outs that she will give to corporations and wealthy Iowans, that's not what was printed. That's not what most people read. And so it's going to behoove us all to really talk about what that means for our communities, because it was a strategic move that I think was done well. Because you got to compare now this moonshot plan of getting rid of the state income tax versus the governor's flat tax, which sounds a lot more moderate than it did, right, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And so now as Democrats, we're kind of back on our heels trying to figure it out once again. And that's disappointing. We can do better, but it's going to take all of us to make sure we're talking about what's really happening.
Thank you. Senator Dotsler.
Unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, well, just a couple of things. First of all, the workforce crisis in Iowa is past a crisis. It's going to be catastrophic before long. The rest of our economy is going to reflect that. I thought that when we came into this session, that we would be working on ideas of how we could move forward to solve this problem. And instead, we offer up a moonshot that basically says we're going to lower income taxes to the point we don't pay them anymore. And that's going to somehow be a recruiting tool to flock people to Iowa. But when you look at what people look at, where they locate, and why do they end up there, and you compare it to some other states that might have very high income taxes, but are gaining population more in Iowa, and you dive into the science of human behavior, you're going to find out that most people do not take a look at their tax rates. They look at the total cost of living. And when you look at taxes, it isn't just income tax. Well, there are three basic forms. Your income tax, which is the fairest form of tax because it's based on your ability to pay. If you make big income, you pay part of that. If you make a little bit, you pay less. If you don't make enough to even pay in, there's other forms of taxes that'll get you. And sales tax is the next on the fairness bracket, because you can cut back on big ticket items. You don't have to buy the new TV set, the high tax items, but you still got to buy the same amount of soap, laundry soap, those kind of things, individual personal items that affect the poor people and the rich just the same. And then here you come to property taxes, and property taxes, in my view, are the most unfair. You pay on what you have, not on your ability to pay. So if you saved and didn't go on vacations, and you built yourself a new house or worked on it, improved, added some additions, whatever, when you retire, your income drops, but the tax on your home is going to continue. And this tax plan is going to do just that. And Representative Smith, pointed out that most people take a look at it and think it's a good deal. But if you look at her tax plan, the high-end tax earners are going to get a 38% tax cut. The people that are on the bottom, that 4% range, they're going to get 6%. Now, how is that fair when you hear 4% across the growth, across the board? The other thing is that the things that drive our economy are getting choked out, that the talents leave in Iowa. When you tell teachers and librarians and other educators that they have a sinister agenda because they're trying to drive pornography across the education system. And I want to tell you, it might have not been all the Republicans' point of view, but every one of them stood up and applauded at that speech. Every single one in the Senate were on their feet, clapping and smiling. And even the governor, who was backtracked in the State of the State speech, talked about the pornography in schools and books and those kind of things. So I'm not buying that, you know, we don't want to hear it because, yeah, the public's finally starting to realize that these divisive issues, these things that we're bringing up, whether you're talking about, you know, the right to carry a gun any place, no matter what your background is, you know, you go down the list, abortion that's upside down here in Iowa with a woman's right to choose, you name these issues. And you look at the national articles. Atlantic wrote a story about, if you want to see a state that messes with education, come to Iowa. What kind of message is that when you're trying to bring people to our state? The other thing about taxes, you cut income tax, but it still costs so much to run government. We do need to make sure that our city has police and fire and the infrastructure to handle stuff. And if you don't have that money, and our friends in the Iowa Senate and House and the governor signed a bill to get rid of a promise that said that when we cut income or corporate property taxes, the state's going to pick that up. I was there, I was part of that deal, and they're going, well, too bad. So now they backed off of their promise there, and guess where it's going to have to come out of? It's going to have to come out of the public's property taxes. You know, we're going to have to make up the shortfall. And, you know, when we talk about Jerry wants to make sure that we got money for recreation that really draws people in Iowa. Well, why should I give away income tax revenue, the Ferris form, and shift onto something else that hurts everybody? You know, one of the things about the governor's tax, where do people who don't pay an income tax, where's their benefit? But if we raise the sales tax, they're going to pay a lot more. So we've got a lot of issues here that are a real problem. Now, one of the things in the governor's budget, they talk a good line, and I consider it more of a moonwalk budget. It has the appearance of moving forward when really we're going backwards. Allowable growth, you talk about, oh, I'm giving these millions of dollars or more to schools every year, but it doesn't keep up with inflation. The public goes, wow, that's really a good job. But guess what the educators are saying? We're going to give them $1,000 when you can't give them a decent wage compared to the rest of the states? Come on. I mean, when you look at the problems across this state, okay, nurses, when Vilsack was elected, the nurses' salaries were way substandard, and we've lost and lost. Guess what's going to happen now? The governor hired travelers who are going to nurses come to Iowa, and our nursing corps is happy that they have some help because they are stressed. People who are doing health services in our hospitals had all they can really take, so they're welcoming it. But then they take a look and see that that nurse that our governor hired is making 3 times what they're making. Well, guess what? I can go up to Minnesota and make $10,000 or more just starting out. My nephew works as a nurse at Rochester in the Mayo Clinic, and he's experienced the same health thing with their nurses. They're hiring travelers up there too. And he's going, you're not paying me enough. I'm going to go and get where I can get those kind of wages. Now, when it comes to workforce, we heard from the child care thing that we had on, employers are in there saying that if I can't find people, and one of the barriers is child care, I'm sending work out of Iowa. I am moving money from Iowa that we would have to a different state. And we are seeing that all the way across the board. The governor's budget, for the University of Northern Iowa's machining research. I know they're getting a new building, but we need money down there at the Tech Works to help design and work out problems in manufacturing so we can have less workers and do the same kind of quality of work, whether you're doing advanced manufacturing concepts right down the list. They're not putting any money into that. So we've got, you know, at the same time, it sounds like a great deal. We're going to give resources out, and people are going to come to Iowa. Well, the number one thing that people want is a really good quality job. And those quality jobs aren't going to continue to grow if they can't find people. Number two, they're worried about the child care. And thank God the governor announced another $36 million for child care. The problem was only, I think, something like 3 million of it was state money. The rest was that bad money coming from the federal government, you know, that once we get it, we'll take credit for it. But shame on the Democrats who are doing that. And then they look at the housing situation, and that's a crisis across the whole state. And then quality of life, if we have not learned anything from COVID and this pandemic, is how people want to have fun. My daughter told me, Dad, you know, she's a top person in principal. She's working at home. She said, I can't take staying at home anymore. I just got to get out. We are social beings, the human race. We want each other. We want to interact. And what do we got for a budget? Zip. We don't hardly put any money into arts, recreation, our parks, as Representative Powers talked about. They're cutting that stuff back, and we have a greater need than ever for our parks and recreation in this state, where people can't afford to go anywhere else and are afraid to travel. We could do that in our parks. And then, I mean, you go and you look at the total cost of living. Iowa's got a good total cost of living. Our taxes as a whole are pretty good. And then I don't know. I'll tell you what, I've been through a lot, 26th session, and I have never seen us in such poor shape that at the same time people claiming how wonderful everything is. It's kind of like the old ostrich that's got their head in the sand, and guess what's sticking up in the air? And we are in deep trouble in the state of Iowa, not on the short term, because we've got all this federal money coming in, but if we're giving away one-time monies for permanent tax cuts, we're going to be upside down. We're going to have problems that we had at one other time. When I first got elected, we did 300 million across the board income tax cut. The Legislative Service Bureau told us, you have to have 4.5% growth in order to sustain this, or you're going to cut budgets all over Iowa. 2 years later, when Vilsack got in, we had 1% growth, and we started cutting education. We started cutting universities. We cut back on money to natural resources, and it went downhill after that. So guess what? It's going to come. And we need to start working on our workforce issues and forget about this moonshot. The moonshot's lunacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Senator Giddens.
Thank you. I'll do my best to just highlight some things here. I think most everything that I feel like needs to be said has already been said, and I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I'll point to a couple of key things, I think, and one of them is that University of Northern Iowa is in my Senate district. It's in Representative Kressig's House district. If we have a workforce issue in the state, what we need are workers. What we need to be doing is supporting our education system, including our institutions like the University of Northern Iowa, that grow our workforce. So UNI in particular has had about 88% of its students come from Iowa communities and tend to return to Iowa communities, right? So But we have had enrollment issues in recent years, and that's not, you know, in small part due to the fact that tuition has increased, and tuition has increased because state appropriation has decreased. To run a public university, it's basically, the budget is basically made up of state appropriation and tuition added together. And when state appropriation does not keep up with cost of living and inflation increases, then you got to raise tuition in order to make up the difference, you know. And so that's what we've seen steadily over the years, is increases in tuition. It's less affordable for students to attend our Regents universities, including University of Northern Iowa. So they're choosing to do other things. They're looking at other options, right? And so one of the best things we can do is you know, fund our Regents universities, including UNI, at a more appropriate level, keeping up with increases in cost. So there is an index called the Higher Education Price Index, referred to by its acronym HEPI, that has far outpaced the cost of increases that the state, you know, legislature has given to UNI for the last decade, since the 2008 recession. So there's a prime thing we can do right there. I will say that on this note, our university president, Dr. Mark Nook, he has put a plan together. He did this shortly after he arrived, to try to, you know, ask for reasonable increases from the state legislature for appropriations, things that actually are affordable over time, that would make UNI more competitive with its peer institutions that are within reach, right? So we've got Winona State University in Minnesota. We've got Truman State University in Missouri. These are places that we compete with for students here at UNI. They're similar institutions. And one of the best ways we can grow our workforce would be to increase the number of students that we attract from adjacent states. You know, we said 88% of our students are in-state students, but if we could do our best to increase out-of-state students, we would gain more revenue from out-of-state tuition. But we've got to be competitive against these peer institutions like Winona State and Truman State and others that are in the region. So Dr. Nook put together a wonderful plan, and it has not been fully funded. So, you know, what can I say? We've had to raise tuition. We haven't been able to stay competitive with these neighboring states, and enrollment has declined. You know, this is a big issue in higher education across the board, but it's hitting us pretty hard here in this state because of our lack of appropriation. So that is a huge workforce, you know, tool, is supporting the universities. And I focus mostly on UNI because that's here in our community. But the other Regents universities, University of Iowa and Iowa State, draw, you know, lots of students from other states at a higher percentage than UNI does. And those students often tend to stay in the state. So what we've got to do is support these universities that attract young, talented people to the state, who often want to stay here once they've come here. So that's a huge thing. We also have kind of hit on, I think Senator Dotzler talked about placemaking. I'm not sure he used the term placemaking, but it's essentially supporting our communities in ways that make them attractive places for people to want to live. Young, talented professionals that we need to grow our workforce, you know, they want to live in attractive communities. I just wanted to point out that, you know, this isn't anything, any just unique ideas that any of us on this call have come up with, but our local chamber and alliance group, which is called Grow Cedar Valley, has a set of legislative priorities. And the central thing in their 2022 legislative priorities is placemaking. And I was very, very proud to see that. You know, the focus has evolved beyond tax policy. And they are not concerned anymore about individual income tax policy. They realize that, as Senator Dotzler said, that is not what you know, professionals are necessarily looking at when they choose where they want to locate. But they are looking at the communities and what types of amenities communities have. How does the education system look in a community? Those kind of things. So I would urge anybody who's watching this to look up, you can just Google it, Grow Cedar Valley's 2022 legislative priorities, and read about their placemaking priorities. You know, it's exactly the kind of stuff that we need to be doing. And they specifically mention the surplus that we have right now. So we have a great opportunity to use these funds to do some one-time projects to really enhance our communities across the state and make them more attractive places for, you know, the type of young, talented professionals that we'd like to draw. So I guess those are the two things for me that I just wanted to highlight. There's so many others. I don't mean to minimize other issues, you know, but our Regents universities, mostly, you know, because of you and I being in my district, I just really wanted to highlight that. And then this issue of placemaking and how important that is in thinking about those kind of things instead of thinking about just, you know, cutting taxes to the bone. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Sweeney. Are you still there, Senator Sweeney?
There, now can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a little more difficult when I'm calling on the phone. I'm calling from my landline as I had some issues with my computer. So I'm not quite as gloom and doom as some of my previous people that have spoken. You know, we kind of been talking about the budget. We've been talking about you know, taxes coming forth, and I am excited about some of the things that came out on the governor's budget. Eliminates taxes on retirement income. That will help our people stay in the state instead of going to Florida or Texas or somewhere or Tennessee where there is no state income tax. So I'm looking forward to that. And with the 4%, it is for all islands. And I understand some of the numbers that they came up with hiring, but making taxes higher for other individuals or lower. I think that if we have that flat tax rate, I think it'll put more things in perspective for people. Then we're also looking at, you know, with the retention bonuses to teachers and correction officers and police officers. That's also in our budget. And another thing that I think that we're doing really well here is with our community colleges and funding them and expanding on the workforces within our community colleges, because there's a lot of students that really, do they want to go to a 4-year? Well, how about a community college? And Senator Dotzler has some good ones in his area, and I've got Ellsworth Community College. In fact, I even went to some courses. I had some courses there when I first moved home to farm. And so our community colleges, I think we're even going to need to tap into them even more so to be able to train our workforce. Yes, we've got $1 million in our surplus and full cash reserves, but we've been named the fastest state to recover from the COVID pandemic, and I think that's just with the help that we are looking at Iowa as not subjective but objective. And with the workforce shortage, we've all been visiting about that for quite some time, and I really think that through tax cuts and regulatory reform, encouraging people to go back to work will help our economy and help people. There's something else that I've got to Leadership Iowa. I've got to experience that a little bit, and we have got some young entrepreneurs in our state looking forward to staying in Iowa, to bringing forth their entrepreneurial skills and passions. And I got to visit with a group of them from the other day, and they're excited about Iowa. They're excited where we are. They're excited to start their new businesses here, and I'm excited for them. We have been, also focused by U.S. News for opportunity. Iowa has been rated #1. And fiscal responsibility, we're right in the middle, and education, number 18. And so I look at Iowa as not such a downhill slide going on here. We've also been really good on reducing red tape, and and also the regulatory and tax climate. We're trying to make sure that that's stable. And so I look at Iowa. I'm going to stay here. Both my boys are still here. And in fact, one son only lives 10 miles. The other one only lives maybe 15 from here. And entrepreneurship and the passion for Iowa is young and alive. And I think we need to make sure that we encourage those young people that want to stay here, and also to look at that workforce. Let's do some more for our community colleges. And let's stay on the track for taxes for people to stay here in the state of Iowa. I'm also looking forward to the retirement income. I had spoken that before, and also for farmers wanting to help get young farmers started here in the state, as if we eliminate the cash rent tax that has been proposed in our taxes for the farmers to say, hey, you know what? I can be able to help a young farmer. We do have the young farmer tax credit, and we're also going to be looking at another way to sharpen the pencil on that. So I'm glad I'm in Iowa, and I'm glad I'm here, and I look forward to living here many more years and encouraging young people to stay in our state and to make sure you thrive on that entrepreneurial spirit.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. And it's now time for our questions. I'm going to ask if you would, anyone who wishes to answer a question, please feel free to do so. And maybe try to keep your answers to about 2 minutes or so, okay? Our first question is, has the press been moved back to the floor? Who would like to respond to that?
The answer is no. They're relegated to the balcony in the Iowa Senate, but you can't. The press booth had a place where you could sit and write and type. You had a desk in front of you, and so most of them aren't even in the chamber anymore. The other thing is, when the press was there, they would look at if somebody had said something, or they were there, and they could wave at you and ask if they could speak to you, and that's all gone. So, and I don't think it's going to come back this session.
Okay. Would anyone else care to answer?
They're back in the house. They are sitting in press row, so they are available to us in the house.
Okay. Anyone else before I go to the next question? All right, next question. Let's see here. I'm alarmed by the number of commercials promoting sports betting and online gambling. What safeguards are in place that only adults are playing, and what resources are there for people who are problem gamblers? Someone like to respond to that?
Yeah, and maybe Senator Doutzer or Representative Williams can help me on the specific figure or percentage, but I know there's a percentage of Iowa gaming revenue that goes towards problem gambling issues, as well as substance abuse issues, and a whole host of other things. I think that as we figure out what revenues actually look like and have, I think this will be our second cycle with some ability to predict. We'll have to find more allocations, because I do find that the advertising is kind of bombarding, and it's tied more to specific apps. And I think There, you have to put in some birth date and those type of qualifiers. But I mean, right, when I was growing up, people had fake IDs. I think they're doing the same thing when it comes to this thing, when it comes to sports betting. And so we have to be mindful of those kind of flaws in the system. But I'll kind of pass over some of my other peers. But I do know that the state does allocate dollars towards helping with problem gambling.
Thank you.
I was on the BlackHawk Gaming Commission, and sports betting controls over the internet, you know, they're not the same. But there are people that do have problem gambling and have been banned for the casinos, or to also be banned from sports betting also, because they put their names in. But somebody who's a gamer, they could use somebody else's name that's right next to them, and they could gamble and turn the money over. With in the casinos, they got cameras on you, and you know, if you're not allowed, if you're in there and they have face net recognition, you could be in trouble. And the other thing is, if you win, somebody's playing for you and you're giving them money and they win, they know who's doing what. So there is a problem there. And I do think that they do check, you know, with the IDs, as Representative Smith said. But the gaming revenues and the amount of bets that are going there are really high, and it's really around the football season, and sports is the big thing. And everybody thinks that, you know, maybe their team's going to win, but you got to beat the spread too. So if you know, the spread's like you're going to win by 3 points or 4 points, you still win, you can lose your money. But it is a problem, and I don't know all the security details, and that individuals really gets into it deep, we could contact us and we could do a little more research on it.
Thank you.
I agree with those comments, and I mentioned this peripherally during, I was talking about committee work, where we want to project gambling revenues, and the side comment was from the Department of Public Health that please pay attention to the money that's allocated for problem gamblers. And quite frankly, I don't know if that's a percentage or if that's a set amount. I presume it's percentage, but if someone would like to contact me, I'll take that on as just a project, and we'll find out how that allocation. But I think it's noteworthy that the Department of Public Health came to a subcommittee meeting and mentioned problem gamblers when that had nothing to do with the bill that we're working on. So that's an indicator. So you can contact me directly, and we'll get some more information.
Anyone else? All right, we'll go to the next question then. I firmly believe that public education is a cornerstone or a foundation of democracy. And I'm really concerned that public education is under attack right now, as evidenced by the school choice bills, the bills that would make it a felony to teach certain things, and the verbal attacks on teachers. What can we as citizens do to protect it?
I think we have to demand better. I think it's unfortunately the solution isn't complicated. I think enough is enough. We can all look at indicators to dictate what we want them to say. We can look at statistics and data and finagle it to say whatever we want it to say. But at the end of the day, I think the measurable is in the morale of our people doing the work. It's what we hear every day from educators who text us saying that they're tired. When did we become the villain? I think the indicator is when we have a state senator who says we have sinister teachers, means that, right, that there has been a line of delineation marked and made, that our state government, or at least one chamber in leadership, is actually pointing its aim at our educators. And so when it comes to attracting talent, I don't even know. So don't show me your data. If I'm a teacher, all I needed to see was that quote. And I'm not coming from Minnesota to Iowa to work. And so for me, it's about what we do to rally and support our educators, but also how we remove the state as a barrier to them expressing their voice and their discontent, to be honest. Right now, the state of Iowa has made it illegal for teachers to strike. It's made it illegal for teachers to collectively bargain for a safe working environment. And so for me, when we talk about how we kind of move the needle on this, I think the community has to rally support like we did for our UAW folks once again, and we may have to take action when our educators can't. My wife has been a teacher in this community for almost 11 years. And I can tell you she loves this job, but she's worn thin. She's worn thin. So we're asking a lot for people who've given everything that they have. And I don't know what more they have in the tank without our support. And so for me, I think that's one area that we have to take as a community and need a voice when the state has taken theirs.
I think
This
Roz
is
said it
Annette
the best,
Sweeney.
was that they have had enough, and I think we need to demand for better. I was talking to a vice principal the other day, and he has 33 years dedicated in Waterloo, and he can't wait to retire. And he's going to retire early because he's burnt out. And we hear that from our teachers and those folks in the schools. They're tired, they're burnt out, they feel underappreciated, underpaid, and they're looking to go do anything else really, and probably make more money and probably feel more fulfilled. So that's a problem. We had education caucus, and one of the things when we look at school funding, and we don't know where that's going to land, and wherever it does, I mean, Roz will let us know, but when you guys are hearing those numbers, I keep in mind that when you hear that number, that then you have to minus the 15 million that they'll deduct from AEA, which is our early, that's taking care of our kids that need that extra help. And that's part of our early intervention for mental health. But so so when you see that number, when you start hearing the numbers flying around, minus 15 million, and then minus 60 million from the back bill that we took away. So not only are our sinister teachers feeling, kicked in the head with that, then when we look at funding, we already have two things once they come up with that percentage that you have to subtract. That'll give you the true number that's going to go to the schools per pupil. And that in itself is kind of troubling, but I just think that we just need to demand better for our students, for our families, and for our teachers that have been there for years, like Roz's wife, for years, dedicating their time, their money, and their hearts to teaching our children. They love to do that, and but now feeling just very underappreciated.
And I think those demands to do better need to be directed at the state level government, senators and representatives. I have 3 schools in my district: Hudson, Cedar Falls, and Waterloo. And I'm confident that administrations feel the same as whoever asked that question. So we need to express our sincere concerns to all of the representatives and senators in Des Moines.
Yeah, and just historically, what we've seen is there has been a continued reduction of funding for supplemental state aid for our K-12 schools. I mean, the history is there. And, we actually have the resources financially to provide those dollars. And, it's particularly our rural schools. And then the conversation about giving parents state monies to pay for their private education. I don't see that as the right direction, and I think it's going to be harmful to K-12 down the road.
It'll dismantle K-12, and I think that's the goal. I believe that's the goal, and I would challenge. I know Senator Sweeney talked about some of your experience and conversations. One thing I would challenge is that if some of us are experiencing the opposite in conversations with our constituents, two things can be true at the same time. everything in the middle is our work. And so that the fact that Iowa is a phenomenal place for your family to want to stay, where people in my community are finding it that it's hard for them to find a place that's welcoming and safe. Those are conflicts that we have to resolve as state government. That is our job. That is our work. And so to ignore the fact that the latter exists, it's not about being all doom and gloom or all optimism. It's about what's real. And the reality is Iowans are struggling no matter where they are. My family out in Grundy County, $17 an hour don't pay for a whole lot anymore. And so we've got to do better across the board. And the 4 counties that are thriving, or us as legislators in our perspective, it's not enough for me. I believe it's not enough for the people that we represent. We got to do better and demand better.
I just want to say a couple of quick things. Classroom size is a big problem, and when you have state aid not keeping up with inflation, that classroom size is shrinking. Educators, that $1,000 bonus was kind of an insult to them when you think about where their salaries are and how little that adds up to be. And I think Representative Smith hit on it. I love Iowa. I'm from Minnesota originally. My family's here. I won't move. And that's why I'm so mad. I want to fight for it. And I see our industries, our core industries, they're shrinking because they can't find the workforce, or we're not supplying them with enough technology to make up in the worker shortage. And the stress level with educators in the classroom is through the roof. My sister works in a local school, and they had 30 students that had COVID here this last week, and a half dozen instructors. And when the instructor's gone, and her job is to find substitutes, she can't find them. And so they jam all those kids in one class. And, that's not the kind of education Iowa has. And it's been aggravated by the pandemic. But the truth of the matter is we were heading back to large class sizes for a long period of time. So we need to invest in our educators and give them the resources so that we can have smaller class sizes. And Representative Brown Powers hit on the importance of the AEAs. Those are where those troubled kids went, kids with barriers. We needed to continue to fund that, in that they keep shrinking and shrinking, and those students are pretty much stuck in the classroom.
Next question. Whoops. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I did something wrong on my tablet, okay, and I can't see anything, but I think what we'll do, because I can't read what the question is right now, I'm so sorry. I think we'll go to closing comments, all right? And I apologize that I can't ask that last question. I'm not sure what just transpired with my tablet, but we'll go to closing comments. And if you would keep it to about 2 minutes or so, that would really be appreciated. And why don't we start with Representative Smith?
Thank you. It's been a great conversation, great discussion. I know our topic has been the economy, but I think most things that we're addressing are tethered together. I think we're in a place in Iowa where we can't fix one part and hope that the other catch up. We have to start doing the work collectively and holistically to start fixing our systems as we move forward. I think the pandemic has shown us the flaws that we have in our system, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But I think our charge is to do this work. And so for me, as a Democratic representative, I'm going into this legislative session understanding that the urge for collective work isn't there. And so I have to ask for transparency. I have to call out transparency and have a mission driven to, making sure that people are informed of what's happening in the process. The majority leader spoke about wanting to be in and out in 90 days. That's wishful thinking, but if that is the case, it's been indicative that the pace of this session is going to be moving fast. And so it's going to be hard to keep up. We'll try to keep you all as informed as possible. But that also means that the public, please, if there are things that come up, let us know. This shouldn't be an us versus they environment, but right now I cannot sign on or support a lot of legislation that I'm seeing. I don't think it represents the things that I'm hearing from people in my district, but also across the state and the needs of Iowans going forward. And so I don't want to feed into the partisanship. but I think that they are doing a lot of things that are not helping the state of Iowa. And we've got a work to do to show transparency in the process and make sure that Iowans are advocated for.
Thank you. Representative Brown Powers.
Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. And, you know, this is always a good time for us to share information with all of you. And I think, you know, Roz is kind of right on there. Kind of my focus really is to really keep my ear and my work towards my constituents and those folks in Iowa who reach out to us. I think that this week I was very busy and just taking care of the people of Iowa, and I like doing that kind of work. I like doing the extra steps to kind of reach out for those families and those people that need to be heard and want to be heard. We had some folks reach out to us via email that live in different towns. I don't even know where they live, and encourage them to come to the Capitol and talk. Encourage them to come and have their voices be heard. I think that sometimes we forget that the chairs we sit in are paid by taxpayers. Our job down there is to listen and to listen to everyone. And unfortunately, there's a great amount of people that don't get heard at the Capitol. So we'll keep pushing. That we have a great team down there, really, and we are spread out as far as topic wise, so we each have our strengths, and we utilize each other, and the other thing is we communicate with each other. So I look forward to keep working for Iowans. My focus this session, really, I got food bank passed last year, so that was my big thing to feed Iowans. So so this year, my focus really is looking at mental health for our children and for our adults, suicide prevention across Iowa, and then really looking at our healthcare system and what we are and aren't doing, and how we can serve our folks with disabilities at home because the short service is there and they're not getting the services they need. Supporting our teachers, and if you know a teacher, please reach out to them this week and tell them that you care and thank them for the things that they're doing extra. I'm going to go to a couple of schools next week. That an old school I used to go to more, and I have a graduate student there that she's a teacher there. I'm going to go and read to the second graders when I'm down in Des Moines. I mean, I think those are the things as leaders we can do. We can reach out and do positive things. And when the fight comes on, and we can stand up on the floor and fight and speak the people's word. So thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing you again. I look forward to not doing this on Zoom, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And again, as I said in the opening comments, I like hearing what my fellow legislators are thinking and what they're talking about. So that's helpful also. I'll continue to work on constituent support like I had the opportunity to do this week, which is always rewarding. We'll be getting into more things in the committees with which I'm involved. We will continue to push the rope on water quality and soil health issues every chance we get. We're gaining a little bit there with understanding with the majority party. The issue, as most everything, comes down to money, but we won't let up. And then we will continue to communicate and represent you and listen to you and make sure that your voices are heard. So thank you all, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you. Representative Kresick.
Yeah, hey, quickly, thanks for putting this together. Been looking forward to hopefully coming out of session with some positive perspectives, some concerns about what's taken place. And I would just urge each of you to reach out to me if you have questions. As Timmy said, we had an opportunity to interact with some students from Waterloo. And it was really enjoyable, young students, and the youth of our state are our future. And I'm very interested in supporting them. So thank you. Everybody stay warm.
Thank you.
It's definitely cold.
Thank you. Senator Sweeney?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And again, I'm apologizing for my voice this evening. I'm excited to be in Des Moines. I'm excited to represent not only my district, but all of the state. I know that we have been working really hard on mental health, and we have been reaching across the aisle with Senator Mathis and different bills that we need to work on. I'm also excited. Last year, we had a record number of new business filings, over 35,000 in the state of Iowa. So there are people out there that believe in our state, that believe that we can overcome the COVID mess that we had, and for us to be able to keep moving Iowa forward. I never forget who has sent me to Des Moines. Never. You're talking to a gal that has done cattle chores almost my entire life, and when you're caring for something, and that type of caring never goes away, especially for the people of Iowa. We are doing, I think, great things down at the State House. We are trying really hard with the educational funding. Our funding has been sustainable, and we've been across the board. They've known earlier than in past years what kind of monies they are looking at, and we have not declined our education funding whatsoever throughout the years. So I am looking forward to more conversations with my educators, and to make sure that we understand what they're wanting to talk about and what their concerns are. And if anybody has any questions for me, please email me. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Senator Giddens?
Thank you, Jean. It's great to be with you all, and I'll echo a lot of what Representative Brown Powers and Representative Williams said about the role that we play with constituent services. Policy making, the work we do in the Capitol during the session is one big piece of what our job is, but we also get a lot of we get a lot of work in between those times, just helping constituents with a variety of issues, and it's very rewarding work, and that's what we all kind of signed up for this gig to do, is to help people. So I encourage you to reach out at any point if you got any sort of issue that could possibly involve state government. We're here to try to help you, and even if it doesn't, if it's a federal or local issue, sometimes we're able to just help kind of navigate those things and channel it to the right place. So I also, we were focused mostly on economy and workforce here tonight, but I just wanted to mention a few other things, and this comes back to us trying to do our best to serve our constituents in the community that we represent. There's a bill that Representative Brown Powers and I have been working on that's related to domestic violence issues, and that was brought to our attention almost a year ago by Dusky Steele, who works with House of Hope here in Waterloo. She has done a ton of research on her own to try to kind of figure out what could potentially be done legislatively in Iowa to try to help kind of address domestic violence issues here in the state. And I'm really excited about the path that we're headed on with that. And I feel like maybe potentially we could do something with that issue that would have a significant impact here in the state, and it really came from our community here. So I want to thank Representative Brown Powers for her partnership and working on that issue here. There's another thing that folks at UNI brought to me. We have an organization at UNI called the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, and they help to develop nonprofit administration professionals And we know that, the workforce issues we're experiencing here in our community and across the state and all sectors of the economy are significant and are real, and they really hit sectors like not the nonprofit sector because those folks were, lower paid positions to begin with, and it's kind of challenging to attract folks into that type of work to begin with, and now this has just really exacerbated that. So I had an idea brought to me by the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. It's a student loan forgiveness program that could have a lot of potential as a workforce attraction tool for nonprofit associations, and working kind of right now behind the scenes on that to see if we can gain some traction in trying to develop a bill that could benefit our nonprofit organizations in our community and across the state as well. So just wanted to kind of bring it around to, what we do day in and day out to support folks in our community. Sometimes evolves into legislative ideas, that we can work on. And so we invite you to reach out to us with those sort of issues that you're thinking about as well, and who knows where it might lead. So again, great to be with you all, and look forward to the next opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Dotzler.
Okay, thank you, Gene. Thank you for the people that are still here. And I want to thank my fellow colleagues here there in the Cedar Valley. We do have a good team, and they're hardworking, and their knowledge is broad. So it's good to have colleagues to lean on, even though I've been around for a while. We all help each other, and it's much appreciated. I think Senator Sweeney might be off, but I just wanted to say something on her behalf. She certainly isn't one of the biggest extremists in the Iowa Senate. In fact, she's really kind of a moderate, and I've worked with her. She's always been very open and nice. I just want to say that when we deal with people across the aisle, a lot of those individuals that we work with in the chamber who we vote against and sometimes wonder why they vote a certain way, we still view them as our friends. And when they have personal problems in their life, we're kind of like a family. And I know that's the way it was in the House, and probably still is. One of the frustrating things is that when ideas come down from leadership, they don't really get vetted, and we don't have the time to really work on them. I think that the final tax cut bill is pretty close to being written. I don't really believe that anything I can say or anybody, my fellow colleagues, is going to change anything. And that's kind of disheartening, because that isn't the way it was when I moved from the Iowa House of Representatives into the Iowa Senate, and I was in the minority. Republicans in the Iowa Senate, we had Republican Don Redfern that always sat down and listened to what you had to say and worked with us, and people listened, and you could change outcomes. But today it's become so partisan that we're so divided. It's almost like even when you try to make reason, nobody listens. We need to get back to that. I know that every person that's elected to the Iowa legislature had to have something going for them to get elected, because it isn't that easy. And you got to be involved in your communities. People got to know you, and you got to be kind of liked. And, that might change as long as you're in office, but to get there, that's the way it is. And it's unfortunate that we see that kind of thing. And some of the things that are breaking down in the Senate, the divisiveness. I've got a senator sits next to me. He's got a flag on his desk that says, "Go Brandon, go." And we know the euphemism for that against President Biden. That kind of thing was never allowed before. Now they're calling it free speech. So, it's hard to work there. when people are that way, but when you get out of the building and you run into them in a, you know, at some kind of event, they're always pretty nice. And somehow we got to connect and move back into working together and listening to each other. You know, we're different experts. I can say this without bragging, there is no person in the Iowa Senate has listened to more developers, more business leaders, and more world and national leaders in the economic development than me, just because I've been there that long and I've listened and learned from them. And it's disheartening to think that they seem to know what's going to solve a problem when really they're responding to the people that I guess maybe write some checks. And that isn't the way Iowa should work. And we're definitely in this together. I'm not going to leave, and I'm willing to stay and fight and try to do the right thing. And I'm planning on running one more time. So you heard it here first. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to express a big thank you to our legislators, not just for participating today, but for everything you do for us down in Des Moines. So thank you. I want to remind everyone, our next forum is February 11th, and the topic then is education, and it should be very interesting. Thank you all who are on Facebook or on Zoom. It's much appreciated, and everybody, as Bob Kresick said, stay warm. Thank you very much. Good night.